Oh, there it is. Yeah, but this has got to be wrong. I got 3:15 marked. Is that right? Well, it must be the next another page then. All right, Brother Mike, do you have a song selected for us? 193.
You know, I may be wrong. I think this other sheet is the one that we were doing.
What? That doesn't tell me anything, this other sheet.
The 315 is correct that you had.
Oh, man, I was way ahead. All right. After we sing this song, Brother Dave's going to lead us in a word of prayer. And yeah, you know, we do have a small group tonight, but they haven't put a church directory out in a while, a nationwide church directory. But I remember seeing there are a lot of churches that they don't have this many on their Sunday morning. They don't have this many members. So I know we're small for us, but there'll be a lot. There's others around that would like to have what we have tonight. Strange. Praise Jehovah. I don't think there's any late word on the funeral service for Junie's brother. I spoke with Ray Rivera a few days ago, and he's, healing, getting better. But anyway, I gave him a hard time. Tonight we're going to be in Joshua and understand that we marked chapter 3, verse 15 in our last session. So if you need the sheet, there's some available. It's for February the 12th. What I was hoping to do as we look at these verses is to see something that would benefit us in understanding leadership and the role that Joshua had in leadership. When Joshua had been with Moses, Joshua was obviously a person who had respect. The people knew who he was, and he'd been Moses basically his right-hand man during the 40 years in the wilderness. And now the leadership has been turned over to him. And there's a few times it seems like that Joshua's kind of let it go to his head a little bit. And God speaks to him, shall we say, personally. So maybe trying to put Joshua in his place, get him to understand that yes, he is a leader, but he's a leader for God's people. He's not a leader for himself. And sometimes we forget that in our roles in life. I don't care who you are. If you're the president of the largest corporation of the world, and unless you happen to be someone like Elon Musk who owns it all, you'd actually work for the stockholders. And so that's an important thing for us to understand in our role of leadership within the body of Christ. Let's look at chapter 3 and verse 15. And it reads, "Now the Jordan is at flood stage all during harvest. Yet as soon as the priests who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped." Now, as I recall, we talked a little bit about this before, and just trying to, from my perspective, imagine what the priests did. Now, they've got the ark. They're walking toward the water that's overflooding at the banks. I don't know if these people swam or not. There's a lot of people, if you're never around that much water, you never learn to swim. There's a stream you get a drink out of, but you haven't jumped in water that's waist deep or head deep and, had to swim. And here they're about to walk into a flood water carrying an ark, which is going to obviously weight them down. So what do you feel the priests had to have at this point? What they have to have in their mind and in their hearts and in their...
Faith.
I think they had to have some faith. Yeah. What else?
Courage.
Yep. Sometimes faith gives you courage. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you're afraid and you still have faith and you do it. But whichever it was for them, they went ahead and walked into the water. At which point, what happened? Flood water stopped. And they were able then to walk in. And after that, then, of course, the people were able to follow. All right, somebody read verse 17. Yeah. That's what I was going to raise. We don't know whether the author is writing metaphorically or whether or not God actually dried up the ground as we would understand dry ground to be. But the water is stopped. They walk into the river. They stand firm, and the Israelites pass through. While they're passing through, these priests are standing there holding the ark. All right, chapter 4, verse 2. Someone read that. Got a new reader?
Take 12 men from the people, from each tribe a man. You want me to read more?
Yeah, read the next verse too.
Take 12 men from the people, from each tribe a man, and command them, saying, take 12 stones from here out of the midst of the Jordan, and the very place where the priest's feet stood firmly, and bring them over with you, and lay them down in the place where you will lodge tonight.
All right. We, as a fellowship, as a brotherhood, we're not real big on, I guess what I would call memorials. I know a preacher that followed me at one church. The first Sunday he was up there, he got up in the pulpit, as he condemned everybody, mostly the women, but he condemned everybody who was wearing a cross. You know, like if you had a gold cross on a necklace, or if you had one pinned to your lapel. I mean, to him that was idol worship, and you know, he just really came down, folks, real hard. I think he was wrong, but nevertheless, my point is, we're not big on memorials. But these 12 stones were not something they were to worship, but they were something God told them to put up as what? Yeah. And what is a memorial? Yeah. It's a reminder of something God has done, in this case, the parting of the sea. And every time they pass by that, and remember what God did for you, for your people, for your nation. All right, somebody read verse 6. So it's an opportunity to teach. It's a reminder to you, and it's an opportunity for you to teach your children, or perhaps some new proselyte. You know, these big old stones that are stacked up here real high, what do they mean anything? Yeah. So, again, I think sometimes we miss an opportunity here, but what about verse 12? You have something? Yeah, giving credit to the Lord for what had happened to them. All right. Again, it's a reminder to us, it's an opportunity to teach other people. Verse 12. Is Chuck our official reader? Nobody else wants to read? half of them stayed on this side of the Jordan, and the other half went to the other side of Jordan. See, there were these three groups that didn't want to cross the Jordan. They said, hey, we like it right here. And Joshua said, okay, you can stay here, but you got to send your fighting men with us. And so I don't know why, maybe there was not enough room for the three full tribes, and so they wanted to give them some more land somewhere else. All right? Yeah. They weren't trying to back out of their responsibilities. And that's an important thing as a lesson, not just to the Israelites, but for us today. Hey, we got our land, we don't need to go any further. Nope, it's not the way it works. You got to come with us, and now we are. We're going to lead the charge. All right, good. Anyone else? All right, I'm going to read 14. That day the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they revered him all the days of his life, just as they had revered Moses. So God is seeking to establish Joshua. Remember, they're just getting started. Joshua's just now become their leader. And so God is not only giving encouragement and confidence to Joshua, he's also letting the Israelites know that I'm with Joshua. He is my leader. He's the one I want to lead us. So that was his responsibility there. All right, verse 21 and a couple of verses after that. Someone finish the chapter. Start with verse 21 and finish the chapter.
He said to the Israelites, in the future, when your descendants ask their fathers, what do these stones mean? Tell them, Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground, for the Lord gave your God dried up for the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you until you had crossed over. The Lord your God did to the Jordan just what he had done to the Red Sea when he dried it up before us until we had crossed over. He did this so that all the peoples of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful, and so that you might always fear the Lord your God.
All right. Know what God did. Know what God's power is. And as a result of that, don't question him. Don't doubt him. I read somewhere, and I've not been able to find it in the text. I guess I just don't know what to look for. But someone said, one of the commentators said, that they actually had two piles of 12 stones. One on the outside after they crossed the land, and one in the river itself. And the purpose for that would be so that when the river was dry, when the water was dry, they would see it then. Because that'd be the only time they could see it. Now, I haven't found anything in the text, but maybe this was just his summary out of that, what his opinion was.
It seems to me that if it was in the middle of the river, they have to be awfully big stones or the runoff, if not the water.
Yeah, that's true. And his point wasn't that you could see them when the water was high, but you would see them when the water was low. And in either case, the fact that there's some on the dry land where they can see, and it's a memorial, it's a reminder, it's a teaching tool, teaching instrument for the Israelites. You have to have a message to pass on. And that's what we need to do with new converts as well as those who are our children. All right, chapter 5, verse 1. Do what?
Read 1 and 2.
Yeah, go ahead.
As soon as all the kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan to the west, and all of the kings of the Canaanites who were by the sea, heard that the Lord had dried up the waters of the Jordan for the people of Israel until they had crossed over, their hearts melted, and there was no longer any spirit in them because of the people of Israel. At that time the Lord said to Joshua, make flint knives and circumcise the sons of Israel a second time.
All right, the size of the people at this point is up for dispute. If we go back to earlier verses, I think it was something like 600,000 fighting men. And if you add to that a wife, most of them would have been married, so that means that's 1.2 million. If they've probably average having at least one child apiece. So, that puts us up to nearly 2 million. And the odds are they had more than one child. So we're talking about, let's just say for round numbers, 2 million people. How long does it take 2 million people to walk across a dry creek bed?
Quite a while.
Yeah, it takes quite a while. And the odds are there are the people who live there, they're out working their fields or they're traveling, going back and forth, and they see this. They see the water stop. They see all this massive number of people are coming across. So what do? They tell everybody, hey, I just saw 2 million Israelites walk across a dry creek bed. The water was stopped, and so it starts going, and the word is spreading. So when they get across the Jordan River, the news travels fast, and it, we might say, puts the fear of God in them, because they say their God can stop the flooding of the river, and they walked across. He's one powerful God. And again, in the mindset of the day, when you went into battle, whether or not it was a psychological thing that the leaders of the armies used or not, they tended to think that if our God's stronger than somebody else's God, then we're going to win. And so now they're seeing a God who can stop a flooding river. So that's pretty powerful.
So the people were already afraid.
They would be, they'd be afraid. Where do we run to? We need to run, but where? Well, what's going to happen? But, all right, anyone else want to share anything? I guess my point being is that not only was this a faith builder for the Israelites, because they did it, they participated in it, it was also a faith builder for the enemy in the sense that they're going to lose, in the sense that Yahweh is more powerful than their God. All right, good. Somebody read verse 9 and 10 if you want to. All right. I'm sorry, Mike, what did you just read? Okay. Did I skip 1 and 2? If I did, I didn't say what I wanted to say. Let's back up to chapter 5, verse 1 and 2 real quick. It would appear that during the 40 years in the wilderness that they did not practice circumcision. And yet they have come to this time when God says, before you go in and take the land that I've promised to you because of Abraham, you're going to have to be circumcised, because circumcision was the sign or the seal that was given to Abraham, and his descendants were then to continue the practice on that. So that's what they did. And the if you look at, if you got a footnote on Gilgal, it would be like a play on words, a reminder to them that they're on a roll, or God's with them. It's going to connect them back to the act of circumcision that they went through and what is about to happen in the future. So this is a significant step for them, because in their obedience to the command of circumcision, they are accepting what God has promised to Abraham. And this is a big moment. I wouldn't put it on the same category as our 4th of July or something like that, but nevertheless, it is a thing of commitment and something that they all are being united on. Anyone else? Yeah. Yeah. You're in harmony with God now. And that's how we're going to win, is when we, like Israel, are in harmony with God. So we could take the example of those who didn't believe 40 years prior to this as a metaphor to the fact that sometimes we doubt, and what we need to do is remove the doubt. Now, in this case, God removed all those men, but sometimes we all have doubts. But now, let's get ourselves in harmony with God. Let's do what God says, and when we do that, we're going to be promised victory. All right, anyone else?
Well, whenever they got across, they celebrated the Passover. So all of the natives looked at, they got across the creek. Now then they're having a party.
Yeah.
Are they getting ready for battle with a party?
And they also, that's another reason why they need to be circumcised in preparation for the Passover. But now, like you said, they're having a party. It's not a party in the sense that you and I would think of a party, or certainly not what our world would think of a party, but they are having a feast. The Passover feast. All right, good. Verse 13, now when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua went up to him and asked, are you for us or for our enemies? Who is this guy? Yeah, there's some discussion as to whether or not this is an angel or whether or not this is Yahweh. The scholars they're not in agreement on this particular thing. Do what? So, and he has a sword drawn. And this same, I've lost my passage right now. But there's another place in Scripture where someone meets one of God's Israelite people, and he's a man who has his sword drawn. The idea of having the sword drawn, ready for battle, indicates that, this is what this guy is. He's going to lead Israel into battle as the leader of the Lord's army. Anyone else? In verse 14 sort of supports the angel idea where he says, but remember, as commander-in-chief of the army of the Lord, I have now come. Then Joshua fell face down. So, again, this is an opportunity for Joshua to have his faith strengthened, have his confidence built up, because he's on new territory. And these men are not trained fighters. Now, I don't know, when we think of trained fighters, we think of people who've gone through a series or maybe of weeks or even months of training to learn how to do certain things. These guys are basically sheep herders. And one of the things that you need to be trained for in battle is for the reality of it. I don't know whether this is still done today, but I was told that during World War II, and they had the trainees crawling under barbed wire, and guns were going off, that the bullets that were being fired were real bullets. So it wasn't like, you could just stand up and say, hey, I'm tired, I don't want to do this anymore. You get hit by a 50 caliber bullet. That ain't going to work. But when you go into battle, there's things you haven't seen before. There's things you haven't heard before. There's cries, and there's bleeding, and there's moaning of your friends. And you see them die right in front of your eyes. All of this is something these guys have never experienced. Now, they may have a sort of a naive confidence in one sense, but the point is they still haven't been in battle. And who needs to have that confidence the most? Joshua, you want to say something? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you said swords, and sometimes, they have spears, and sometimes they have hoes, depending on what they have. Bring your weapon. One thing I got is a shovel or a pitchfork, and so we bring that. And so, for me, what is happening here with Joshua is to instill him with the confidence and the assurity. All right. Go ahead. Yeah. And that was the fulfillment of a promise, and it was, again, a thing to say to them, okay, you've been getting the manna, but now you're not, because what you have in front of you is even better. So I'm giving you the fruit off the trees, the harvest of the fields, whatever might be planting there. We do know it was harvest time, do we not? If we go back, to the very beginning of the chapter, that the rivers rose during harvest time. So that means whatever's in the field was ready to eat. So they could get the grain, if there was grain, and maybe make some bread, some whatever they might call bread. Might be a tortilla, I don't know. A lot of people eat something similar to a tortilla. They just call it something different. Remind you of what? The burning bush that Moses was told, take off your sandals, show them the Holy Grail. Where some of the people go back and say, well, this is God. So anyway, but God or an angel of God, he was in the presence of that which was holy. All right. All right, anyone else have anything to share? All right, the next page we need to be going to, it's got the same chapter 5s over again, but we're going to skip those and go down to chapter 6, verse 2.
And the Lord said to Joshua, see, I have given Jericho into your hand, with its king and mighty men of valor. And the Lord said to Joshua, see, I have given you in... Oh, I didn't read verse 1. Now Jericho was shut up inside and outside because of the people of Israel. None went out, and none came in. And the Lord said to Jericho, see, I have given Jericho to your hand, with its king and mighty men of valor.
All right, so the people of Jericho have gone inside and locked the door, closed the gates. They've got the wall around their city, and from all we know, was a pretty well-walled city. And he says, I've given you the king and what? How does he describe those other people? Mighty men of valor. So God's not putting down their army. In fact, he's saying they're strong guys. But Israel's going to win because I'm with you. And that, of course, we know is what happened because we read the book before. But the point I wanted to stress there is that these are not cowards who have run away. Now, they have run inside to the city because that was their best place to be. I mean, if you got somebody attacking you, it's nice to be behind a walled city. That's their strongest position. So that's a good military position for them to take. But God says, I'm giving it to you. Even with their strong army, you got it. You're going to win. Again, it's a point of building faith, building confidence, understanding God is on our side, their side. All right, anyone else want to share anything? All right, they're told to march around the city. Have you read that? Do you remember that? How often did they do that? Well, eventually, but it was 7 days, but once a day for 6 days, and then on the seventh day, which was also the Sabbath day, they marched around for 7 times. Tell me about the marching order, the choreography. Who went first? The priest and the ark. Why? God's going first, and you said, that's God. Yeah. God is leading you. God is with you. God is going to see that you are victorious in this. You know, a lot of times today, I hear people, when they have a calamity in their life, they want to ask the question, where's God? Well, God doesn't work that way in our lifetime, but at this point, he's telling Joshua, and he's telling all the Israelites, I'm here with you. I'm leading you in this battle. And they walk around, and what kind of noise do they make when they walk around the city? Yeah. Yeah. No shouting, no singing songs, no calling out nasty names to the people in Jericho. There's got to be a little noise of their clatter, of their swords or spears or whatever they might be carrying. Yeah. But they themselves are not doing much. It's an interesting situation. And, ask, how would you feel about this? You march around one day, once today, and once tomorrow, and again the next day. And you've done this 5 to 6 days in a row. And finally he says, okay, now today we're going to do it 7 times. I'm just trying to go think what is going through the mind of these Israelites. Are they beginning to think Joshua's crazy? Are they going to begin to think, when are we going to do something? But we know on that 7th day, the Sabbath day, is when things did happen. You were going to share something?
The concept to me is that he was doing this to unsettle the people of Jericho.
Yeah.
Whenever you're doing something like that and then you don't do anything, that gives them time to, hey, what's going on here? And the more it happens, the more fear that grows inside them. And the fear impedes their ability to fight.
Yes, and also, during this seven days, we don't know how much food they had, how much water they had. They could be concerned about running out of resources. We're going to have to go out here and attack them, get out of here. All sorts of things or issues are brought up in this situation. But you're right, it increases the fear level and the anxiety within the walls of Jericho. Anyone else? All right. They marched and marched, and until finally on the 7th day, verse 15, they marched around the city 7 times in the same manner, except that on that day they circled the city 7 times. And when the priest sounded the trumpet, and Joshua commanded the people, shout. The people shouted. When there's been some archaeological efforts to find the city of Jericho, so far they've been unsuccessful. There have been a couple of times when they thought they did find it, once in about 1930-32 and another around 1950-52, somewhere in that area. But then they've decided, no, this actually wasn't the same city. But anyway, the fact that they destroyed the walls, they swept over the city, they killed everything. They were to take nothing. Yeah, except Rahab and her family. But they killed the livestock, which, you'd think, well, what's wrong with the livestock? Well, for whatever reason, God didn't want them to take anything from that city. And that, of course, was going to be a problem because somebody did. But the fact that they didn't take anything. Now again, you got to back up a little bit. Where have these people been for the last 40 years? Out in the wilderness. And now all of a sudden they're coming into Jericho, a quote-unquote modern town, and they can't pick up anything. You know, I could use a good goat. I could use some sheep. I could use a cow. I need a milk cow. No, and look, here's this valuable gold here, these precious stones. No, you don't take any of it. Why? What's the message? What's God saying to these people? What does he want them to know?
He wants them to know that he is doing it. It is not anything that they have done. They could not, there's nothing they can pick up that can even compare with him. And he wants no comparison of any kind.
Okay. They're not doing it for themselves. They're doing it for God, and God's doing it for them. Yeah, don't take anything. And yet we have an expression, to the winner goes the spoils, which means if you're in a war and you do something like this, you take everything they have. But God says, don't take anything.
He wanted them to obey.
Mm-hmm. Wanted their obedience.
The most important thing of all.
All right, good, good. Anybody else? Mm-hmm. And it's the first. You know, God, when he wants, when they have the harvest later on, they're supposed to bring in the first parts of the harvest, and Jericho is the first city. So there's a lot of things wrapped up in here that if we just pass over it, jump over it, we miss. Again, God is what is at the core of this. God is the leader of this. God is the one who's blessing them. God is the one who's making Israel a nation and giving them a land. It's God, 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 Yahweh, you know, that's doing all this for them. All right, good. All right, they burned the whole city, but they put the silver and gold into the Lord's house. Joshua spared, I'm reading verse 25. Joshua spared Rahab the prostitute with her family and all who belonged to her, because she had hid the men Joshua had sent as spies to Jericho, and she lives among the Israelites to this day. Well, that makes it sound like she's still alive. Is she, or is he writing in terms of her descendants? I don't know. But she lives among the Israelites to this day. Basically means she's become a proselyte. She has become a Jewish woman. She's gone through whatever it was that they required in order for her to be categorized as a Jewish person. And we know that she was in the lineage of Jesus Christ. Now in verse 26, at that time Joshua pronounced the solemn oath, accursed before the Lord is the man who undertakes to rebuild this city, Jericho. And apparently there was a man who several hundred years later attempted to rebuild the city of Jericho, and somewhere in that process he lost two sons, his oldest and his youngest. So anyway, the curse was pronounced by God on the city being destroyed and to stay destroyed. Why? I don't know. Again, unless we go back to the sacrifices and the first fruits all belonging to God. And it may very well have been a symbol of power, but we don't want that coming back. All right.
To the mental state that God wants people to have.
Yeah.
He has destroyed it,
Yeah, the mental state of knowing God's given his edict, his command, and it's gone, and it's going to stay gone. All right, good. Somebody read the passage in Kings, 1 Kings 16:34. You got, oh, wait a minute, I haven't found it yet.
Oh, you haven't found it?
I'm not sure this is the right one.
You should have 7.
So it didn't work out well for him. All right. Okay, I've incorrectly dated this, Chuck, but that was my confusion here. Yeah, if you don't mind. All right, I'm going to pass these out for next week. And let's pause there, and we'll pick up with chapter 7. Next time.